Hey guys, it's carrying my review for The Sisters Brothers. And what the Sisters Brothers essentially about is we center on the aforementioned Sisters Brothers. These two are some of the biggest outlaws in the town right now. Everyone is pretty much on their trail, and Eli and Charlie's sisters. And basically, this takes place when the gold rush was going on. It's very popular right now, and we can see these two are very much adamant about getting that gold. And in order to do that, they need to enlist the help of this chemist who is going to help them find this gold that was wanted by their boss. And basically, they need to find it before their boss does, and that's really all I'm going to say. So the Sisters Brothers overall, I was hyped for this movie. I mean, just from the trailers and the cast, this to me looked like it could have been one of the best films of the entire year. I mean, just again, look at the cast and, look at the marketing. There were so many things I was hyped for here, but at the same time, I'm not the hugest Western guy, as you guys know. There are definitely some good ones out there, but I'm just never someone that has gravitated toward Westerns as I have with other genres. That being said, this was definitely one I was very excited in, and for the most part, this film definitely does not disappoint. This is definitely a really great film, but it is much different than what the trailers are letting on, and I want you guys to know that right away. This is a much different film than you probably think it's going to be, but we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. Now, look, like I said, immediately that was one of the things I was drawn to here. I thought the cast here, there's so many A-listers, so many people that I highly respect, and I really do think everyone did a great job. However, I will say right off the bat, the best thing about this movie is the chemistry between the two brothers. John C. Reilly and Joaquin Phoenix are on fire in this movie. I loved their dynamic here. Charlie's more sort of, Charlie is much more violent and erratic and willing to kill, while you can see Eli, while he is willing to kill, he's a little bit more patient. He's a little bit more sensible in that sense, and I really did like the relationship that these two had. For me, though, out of the two, John C. Reilly definitely stood out the most. I thought he was fantastic in this film. I really love the arc that Eli does go through here, because you see that he's someone who very much wants to support his brother. He doesn't really want to do this anymore. He's trying to kind of distance himself away from it. And there's this one scene he has towards the third act of the movie, and it's pretty much wordless, but the things that he has to do in this film and the places that he goes are incredible. And Reilly really does bring it here. This is honestly some of the best work I think I've ever seen from him, and I think this is definitely one of the best performances I've seen so far this year. I loved what he did here. I thought he was so well cast, and for me, he was definitely the star of this entire film, for sure. And that's not to say the rest of the cast doesn't do a good job. Like I said, Phoenix does very much relish in playing this very unhinged brother, but the rest of the cast here doesn't really compare to those two brothers. Jake Gyllenhaal does a good job in the film. I mean, obviously, he does a good job, and Riz Ahmed, pretty much everyone is well casted here, but like I said, it really are those two brothers that do stick out the most for me. But now I want to get to the directing and the writing, because here's where we get to the biggest flaw with this film. Because Jacques Audiard, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but this is a French director. This is someone who, this is actually the first movie he's directed that isn't in French, which I think is honestly really interesting, and it can be very daunting for a director. And it does kind of show here, I'm not going to lie, and that really is where my biggest problem with this movie lies, in that the movie markets itself as this really fun adventure, and for the first hour, that's very much what it is. It's these two going on this quest to track down the chemist and get there before their boss, the Commodore, does, and there's a ton of fun adventures and things like that, and it's a lot of fun, for sure, and I do think that he did a very good job with saying that tone, the film doesn't take itself too seriously, and, it definitely does take itself seriously, but there are points where it isn't afraid to get really fun and, get into some really ridiculous stuff, and that's something that I definitely did enjoy with the film. The second half, on the other hand, turns into something completely different. The film gets a lot more serious, and it starts to focus a lot more on the two brothers overall and their worldviews and why they really are doing what they're doing and what they do once they find the gold and things like that. So, like I said, the directing, it's not bad, it's just two completely different things going on. It's two completely different tones, and I just think it could have been a little bit more balanced. And you can definitely tell that Audiard, I don't want to say that he had a hard time making the transition from French to English, but I do think had he done more English-style films, I do think the tones would be a little bit more balanced here, because like I said, they are two rapidly different tones, and they're not a huge problem for me. Like, this didn't necessarily bother me, but if it was more balanced, I think the movie could have been even better than it ended up being. Going to the writing, however, I think it's honestly really strong here, because like I said, while this film is a lot of fun, and it definitely does give you a Western film that is much more violent and brutal, it also is very grounded, and especially when it comes to these two brothers, I think are very well written, especially once we get more into their history and who they really are, and especially the character of Eli, who, like I said, we realize doesn't necessarily want to be involved with this. He's kind of just doing it for his brother. You know, the only thing that matters to him is his brother, and he will do whatever he can to make sure his brother is okay. And I really love that dynamic in the film. There's this one scene he has with Riz Ahmed in particular, where they're talking about, you know, why he does the things he does for his brother, and I thought it was incredible. I really love where they end up going with that. And then Charlie, in comparison, could have easily been a one-note character, but he's really not. You do get a sense of why he is the way he is, and I think they did a very good job with it overall. And like I said, I think these two characters are very well written, enough to carry the film, because other than them, the writing is not all that impressive. I will say the Gold Rush stuff I do like a lot, seeing how just crazy people were with this, how set they were on making sure that they had the gold, and especially in this film, where that ends up going is insane, and I was not expecting it to go to the places it did, but it actually does get quite dark, and again, that was something that was jarring considering how fun the first half is, but I definitely did enjoy that. The problem when it comes to the writing are the other characters in this film, which just aren't really characters. Gyllenhaal and Ahmed, as good as they are, there's not really much of anything to them. And it's very frustrating because Gyllenhaal starts off and you think he's going to go somewhere really interesting. He has this really great monologue, and then he's never really seen in the film again until the third act. And that really was my biggest thing here. You have these two groups of people. Like I said, Charlie and Eli and Riz Ahmed and Jake Gyllenhaal, and they're both trying to do the same thing. They're both trying to track down this gold, and you think, okay, maybe it's going to lead to some sort of conflict. And it really doesn't. It kind of peters out into something that I did enjoy, but it does not go in the way you think it's going to. And I think we just needed a little bit more to the characterizations there, because I just did not care as much for them as I wanted to, especially Gyllenhaal. I thought really didn't have much of anything going on in terms of his character. Ahmed, they do add a few layers to, but Gyllenhaal not really. And once they arrive in the film, they very quickly are gone, and I just don't think they were in the film as much as they needed to be. But like I said, Charlie and Eli do carry the film pretty well. They do enough for me to enjoy what's going on, and especially when it comes to the main story of, like I said, Eli kind of trying to get out of this and coaxing Charlie into doing the same thing. I thought that was definitely a very interesting story, and I did like where they end up going with that. And look, let me just say, the comedy here I did actually enjoy a lot. There's a really great running gag with a toothbrush that I thought was pretty funny. The thing is, though, once that second half kicks in, the humor kind of goes away, and it just wasn't as fun anymore. And again, I just don't know why they did that. I think they still could have kept the humor in there, but it completely dissipates after that first hour. Once they eventually get to the gold rush, the entire movie turns into something different, and again, it just did not feel as well balanced as I think it really should have here. In terms of cinematography, this film is beautiful. I love the cinematography in this film. There's so many great shots. You really do feel like you're back in the 1800s, but like I said, the film's not afraid to get kind of grisly at points as well, and very realistic, and I definitely did enjoy that about the cinematography a lot. I thought it was definitely very well done here. Nothing particularly groundbreaking, but I definitely did enjoy it. The score I also really loved in the film. I think once again, Alexander Desplat just continues to kill it with his scores. It's such a fun, playful score. Eventually, obviously, it does get dark, like I said, as the rest of the film does, but it's a very fun, fun, playful score, and I really enjoyed it a lot. And the editing, like I said, the film, as well paced as it is, it feels very, very drastically different. I personally enjoyed the second half more. I liked the first half. I thought it was fun, but I thought the second half had a little bit more to it. It got me more invested in the characters, and I enjoyed that. And I will admit, the first act was a little bit hard to not necessarily get into, but it was kind of like, all right, where are we really going here? Like, I couldn't really tell where they were really going, and once we do get somewhere, the film does get interesting. I just felt that the pacing could have been a lot better, and especially, like I said, it's more of a tonal problem than anything. I just felt that, you know, the first half is so fun and, you know, adventurous, and the second half is much more toned down and realistic, and they just don't really mesh as well together as they could. That being said, the ending of this movie I thought was truly beautiful. I really loved where they ended up going with it. They could have easily made this like a very brutal ending, but they actually do give it a really nice sort of emotional punch, and I thought it was honestly kind of sweet where they end up going with it. So like I said, The Sisters Brothers, it might not be the movie that I necessarily wanted it to be, but it still is a really great film. It's got a great performance from both John C. Reilly and Joaquin. Those two alone are enough to anchor this film, I think. It does have a good portrayal of the gold rush, and it does have a very interesting, you know, character dynamic there that I definitely really enjoyed. It's just really that tone that does hold it back. It's just that bait and switch there that just didn't feel as natural as it really could have. But other than that, I really enjoyed The Sisters Brothers a lot, and I'm definitely going to give The Sisters Brothers overall a B+. But overall, guys, in my review, The Sisters Brothers, so much you guys saw this movie overall, left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.